Okay, hey folks. Here I am back in Diablo 4. Been doing a lot with the rogue. Really enjoy it. And I think I've found a pretty awesome spec for leveling and playing, which is built completely around vulnerability, which is super important for rogues. Everything that I've been reading is actually telling us that the Twisting Blade spec is super powerful. And so I'm running Twisting Blades right now, but I'm not a big fan, and I think that the spec that I've built is actually outputting a little bit more DPS and has a lot more controllability as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little test at how quickly I can run through one of these missions at level, oh boy, at level 30 in the two specs. So, oh boy. Well, that answers it right there. I am currently in the spec that I think is not quite as powerful and not quite as controllable. So, if I pull up my abilities and take a quick look, this is the recommended leveling spec for Twisting Blades that I'm seeing around a lot. It's using Puncture. It's using, it looks like it's actually not using Rapid Fire. It's using Twisting Blades. I'm getting my Rapid Fire from gear. It's got a little bit of dash, a bunch of shadow step. It's going into shadow imbuement with shadow crash and consuming shadows. A little bit of concealment in there, and I don't think I have used shadow clone yet. But it's got a lot of this is from gear. But basically, when I'm looking at Twisting Blades, it's really a lot about high hit damage. And I'm not really a fan because in melee and leveling, for some of these fights, I'm feeling like it's not as great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in to these ruins. I'm going to do a couple fights, and then I'm going to try and reset it and do the same few fights in a different spec and see how it goes. So let's just run into a couple fights here. See how quickly I can get these mobs down. Okay, so I'm definitely putting out some damage. It's just not feeling like these mobs are going down as quickly for me versus my preferred spec. So let's kill this mob. And I'm just going to port to town and swap my spec. And then we'll head back in and we'll fight some of those same types of monsters and see how quickly I can do it. Okay, let's go to our abilities tab. Let's open this up. Let's refund all. Great. Okay, so to start out, I'm using Forceful Arrow. Now, Forceful Arrow, if you go into adding a little bit more and then adding Forceful Arrow pierces through vulnerable enemies, it can be useful, not super powerful. I need to really just get to this second level to start unlocking Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire is really the core thing that I'm utilizing. I'm putting a couple points into Rapid Fire. I'm making sure I'm speccing Enhanced Rapid Fire, and then I'm also going to improve Rapid Fire. And this is totally key because you're gaining energy when it's damaging vulnerable enemies, and vulnerable enemies are really going to be the key to this build. I also in the past have put a point into Flurry in case I get into close combat. I'm going to skip that this time, and I'm going to move on down. And really what I'm looking for is I'm trying to get to my poison trap. So I might need to add a little tiny bit more in order to get there. Weapon mastery, I could be good. Let's see, what do I want to use here? I am kind of changing the spec tiny bit in order to get to this next level. 2, 3. I'm just going to toss that in for now. Toss another one of these in. I need 2 more points. I'm going to try doing weapon mastery this time. Okay, so really what I'm trying to get to is unlocking Poison Trap, which I'm really just using for stunning enemies, knocking the enemies back. So points here, points here. Let's see, countering Poison Trap, 30% chance to reset your Imbuement skill cooldown. That's really handy. And then I'm going to need to spend a couple more points so I can get all the way down to Shadow Imbuement. Let's see, what have I used in the past? I think I've thrown some points into Exploit just to increase my damage. And this is what we're really looking for. Shadow Imbuement. And then increased critical on Enhanced. And then I'm also looking at Blended. So Shadow Imbuement's primary explosion makes enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. Super awesome here, because instantly I can make an AoE effect that puts a whole bunch of mobs at vulnerable. What I'd really like to do here is I want to throw some points into Shadow Crash as soon as I can. But what I'm really looking at is also throwing some points in Precision Imbuement, which just means that I start making a lot more damage. In the past, I haven't done either of these, so I'm going to throw some in here. I really want Consuming Shadows because it's going to give me more energy, and it's going to let me then be just doing more damage more quickly. I'm going to crank that up until I can unlock Shadow Clone, and then I want to pick Shadow Clone. I'm going to go with Prime, and I'm going to go with Supreme, just because I'm trying to up my damage. So the idea here is you're doing more damage against vulnerable targets, you're making more targets vulnerable, you're getting more energy, you're also popping your clone as much as you can, and that clone is doing more damage. And then what else had I popped into this? Eventually I'd like to get into also doing Lucky, and maybe even getting Trap Mastery because of the vulnerable connection there. But in this case, I've got 6 points left. I'm going to throw a little bit more. I don't think I want any more Shadow Crash. I could use more here. I think I'm going to really throw those there. And for this one, I think I'm going to go with our Lucky Hits. I'm going to throw 1 in here. Okay. So this is also primarily going to be a ranged attack. It's totally different from the way that I was just playing, which was all about close combat. Okay. And this playstyle to me has a lot more control. I'm typically putting poison traps at choke points. I'm moving up to pull mobs, pulling back if I need to, making sure my imbuement is always up. And then I'm rapid firing very, very quickly. And it really seems to me that these mobs are going down a lot faster. Yep, I feel like things are going down so much faster with this build. Making sure to drop my trap. Yep. Just popping that explosion, making all of those mobs vulnerable, and then just taking them down super fast. The other thing to keep in mind here under specializations, I'm also running Inner Sight. This was even more powerful before Inner Sight got nerfed just a couple days ago. You know, I'm filling up my Inner Sight meter. The nerf a couple days ago meant that there's a small cooldown before you're able to build that meter back up. All right, this is good. I got a boss here, or pseudo boss. He's a teleporter. He's got, look at that. He went down super quick, way quicker than that other Twisting Blades. So this is really about just stacking as much stuff around the vulnerability mechanic. And I need to go to town. But I'm also running a crossbow. Crossbows are really good against vulnerable enemies. So in this specific instance, this crossbow has plus 22% against vulnerable, and then it also has additional lucky hits that make things vulnerable, and then I've also got additional critical damage to vulnerable enemies. So I'm really, you know, paying attention to anything that's vulnerable. I'm also trying to make sure that I'm killing all my Inner Sight targeted enemies first, and then I'm just keeping Shadow Imbuement up as much as I can and making sure those explosions are making a whole bunch of mobs vulnerable right in the beginning, and I'm popping that clone. And I am just ripping through my enemies. There we go. The main problem that I've been having is where I'm running out of energy too fast, so I'm also trying to get more energy gear. And as I continue leveling, I'm going to be building up more things that are able to add energy to my cycle. That's really where some of these things like Consuming Shadows has really helped out. I'll put a comment in here with the specific build that I'm running with, and if I'm making changes to that as I move forward, I'll update that, but hopefully this will be useful to you. For anyone who wants to do a nice vulnerability build for leveling in Diablo 4, and hopefully this will also work in endgame, because it seems pretty darn powerful. All right. Thanks for checking this out, and good luck in your leveling.